Podcast. The podcast now again.
In this podcast, I spoke with Spencer Grant. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a Tai Chi coach and teacher. Please enjoy whatever you listen to of this talk. Today, I was walking and I saw, because I'm living in a school, I saw a mom walking her young child, into the school, and there's like I don't know, some kind of a brick in the ground or a tile that was protruding upwards, higher than the other bricks. And she hit it with her toe and tripped on it. And like, it was almost kind of like this micro experience of like insight. But like, what came into my mind was like, life is filled of things to trip on. And if you are not really paying attention, you are probably going to trip on shit. And then it like made me think about how there's a lot of external stuff in my life since I was born till now that I've tripped on, and a lot of internal stuff that I've tripped on. And when I say trip, it's like a metaphor or an analogy for reacting, um, reacting to external and internal stimuli, and this antidote of like paying attention. If I can pay attention and be more careful, so to speak, or heedful, more aware, then I guess it maybe lowers the probability of reactivity. So you've practiced Qigong, you've practiced meditation. How has cultivating awareness and the ability to pay more attention within yourself and outside of yourself, how has that transformed? Have you found that you've tripped less, so to speak, as a byproduct of your practices?
Yeah, I would say that as every month and year goes by, that's when you start to see the like more obvious changes that have taken place in terms of how paying attention to yourself and paying attention to other people and paying attention to your relationship with yourself with other people has then over time led to shifts in behavior, shifts in practices, shifts in habit, and and shifts in uh, the way I communicate with people, and to have
Let's touch on that. How
a
how has communication shifted as a byproduct of your practice and just being more careful or paying more attention or being more aware? How have you noticed that you've communicated with others differently?
I think it takes place on multiple levels. Uh, I think for me, what stood out first was the more being more sensitive to how other people are feeling when I'm with them, and I'm being able to pick up more on their emotions by being aware of the mind space that we're sharing, right? And picking up on the kind of being able to read people's kind of sub cues, the things they don't say, or like how they respond to things that you put out, or like how they respond to certain ideas.
So are you more
Um,
carefully attuned to body language and facial expressions than you were previously?
yeah, and like just subtle, like just subtle things in the way people might, the way that their eyes might shift when they hear a certain thing or when something's said, and how they just the kind of the energy behind it too as well, and just kind of picking up on those subtle cues of
Maybe
how they're
like
responding, and then like
yeah.
responding to it, and then also like not like over time, like recognizing that like this is something that I heard someone say the other day. Uh, just because I'm aware of something now doesn't mean that that's necessarily what the other person needs to hear, right? And then so like being more aware of like where the other person is at, and then being aware of the context of the relationship between the two of you in the moment. Because like sometimes there's a time and a place for me to be like just listening, and there's a time and a place to be giving advice on the stuff, and then there's a time and a place to just be a friend and to just uh be just hang out and chill and just be kind of like down to earth and speak nonsense. Like there's a time and a place for just like banter, and there's a time and a place for uh specific things. So it all depends on the relationship. So yeah, it's just that ability to adapt and to be able to read the moment. And then coming back to what I was saying earlier, so like the emotional kind of energetic level, but then over time as well, recently a lot more to do with the words. Becoming aware that like words matter too, and just subtle shifts in the way that you structure your sentences can actually make a difference in how people perceive things. And like trying to swear less, like I have a strong tendency to throw in the F-bomb and other words, swear words. And sometimes just like as I get older, especially the last few years, just realizing that often like there's a time and a place for the F word. Like sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes I just use it too much, or like I throw in swear words that just don't need to be said, especially when, maybe you're like working in a professional context and just being able to notice the difference about where you are.
Totally. So one thing that I've there's been this dynamic, I think we've spoken about it before a couple of times, is that like this path um, of development, so to speak, there's some people that have strong psychological aversion to vocabulary that is religious or even just spiritual, even spiritual and non-religious. How would you speak to someone about the path without, like, what is the path without religion, without spirituality? How would you speak on the path with just basic, like, human vocabulary?
Hmm. Um,
Like, what is it?
well, I think a part of it for a lot of people is that basic human vocabulary seems to me so far for a lot of it, uh, like it's partly the kind of scientific worldview that's been so accepted. Like in my experience, that seems to be the thing that is the most needed in order to communicate certain ideas to people that perhaps have those aversions. Because I can easily, someone that doesn't have those aversions, like you can easily uh kind of just communicate esoteric ideas without having to give examples or like data or like give it like logical rational reasoning or like give it uh backing of experts that are smarter than I am. But then like some people, they need to hear it, and then once you throw it in there and you combine the two perspectives, then immediately once you start talking about things like energy work and trauma and I don't know, energetic uh work and energetic awareness. Like if you combine it with those like scientific uh the scientific vocabulary, I found people become very receptive and very open to it. And I think it might be a testament to the time that we live in. I think 2023, like this is a different time. Times have changed. Like in the last 20 years, the last 10 years, the last 5 years, I think there's been some level of kind of evolution in this sense. And I think that as these ideas become more mainstream, as science kind of catches up, um, as people like, I don't know, like Gebel Mate gain more reputation and gain more recognition for like their life's work, then although people might have aversion when they hear the word like spiritual
Mhm.
or right or like authenticity or something like this, right? And they're like, oh, that kind of like mumbo jumbo. But then like you just back it up with actual kind of more logical, rational reasoning. And as these ideas become more mainstream and people just become more exposed to it, and they become a bit more open to it. I had someone the other day, like they got cupping done on their back and acupuncture. And then I mentioned like the kind of energetic and traumatic emotional blockages that might take place in, I don't know, like an injured knee or like an injured back from like an old injury. And then yeah, I mentioned that as well as the kind of functional mobility side of it, of the issue. And yeah, and I think he turned around and his literal words were, "Oh yeah, like a few years ago, I never would have been open to these ideas of energy and trauma, but now it makes sense to me these days." And I think it's just, things are catching up and things are merging. Um,
Okay, so let's say that,
yeah, but at the
let's
same
say,
time, it seems that like I do find myself like tying it into the attention thing. I do find myself like being selective with how I use those words. Like I'm much more careful to throw out the word spiritual or spirituality these days, just because I know the response
yeah, there's a
they and
huge
trigger it
amount
can
of
have. It really depends.
yeah, it really depends.
Yeah.
You have to get a feel for it. So let's say that there's some kid right now that's listening to this podcast. He's 18 years old and he's super into all that esoteric metaphors and spirituality and mysticism, etc.
Yeah.
And he just wants to like preach it all to everybody and like try to convince everyone. But then there's the stigma of being spiritual or the stigma of believing in religious ideas or spiritual things. Would you just kind of say, just pay attention to how people are responding and try to be skillful in what you say, or what advice would you give to them?
Well, I think uh you would need to, first of all, if you do have a desire to share anything and to preach something, then you should like learn who you're sharing to. Like who are these people that you want to teach? Who are these people that you want to deliver insight to? Because you might find very quickly that actually uh that they're open to the ideas you want to tell them, but you just need to know how they kind of see the world and what their needs are and how they want to use this information, and then you just find better ways to deliver it to them, and that might involve, you know, scientific research. That might be a part of it. um yeah, so that's just one
So
way to look at it, I
you
guess.
may also have to study some more kind of materialistic, scientific based evidence in psychology and etc. Okay,
Yeah, and
there's
also just making it relevant and practical for people.
yeah, come meet people where they're at, not trying to like force them to see things from where you're standing. Yeah,
Yeah, and also one more thing is like don't expect like everyone to try and like you're trying to turn everyone into you. Like you're not like making
yeah,
copies of you. You know what I mean? Like people are gonna take. You might have really good insight and ideas into things, and you should share it.
yeah,
But then people are gonna take it however they're gonna take it, and they're gonna take it within the context of their own life, and it's
totally.
gonna be relevant to them in whatever way it's relevant. So yeah, that's why it's like non-attachment to the result and just yeah, like if you have a desire to share insight, then just putting it out and allowing people to do whatever they will with it.
Rad. Okay, this may be the last thing that we touch on because we have just 6 minutes left. But this may be the last thing we touch on. This is one dilemma that I've had, and I don't know if you can empathize with it or not. But I feel like I'm not the only person in the world with this dilemma. So Ido Portal, he said, don't buy more books. Don't buy more workshops or online art lessons, or whatever kind of online lessons. He didn't say art, but he said like just online lessons. Don't commit to new projects and don't start new practices until you have finished the ones you already started but have not finished yet. I find myself having bought so many online books, so many different like online like art lessons, started so many different projects, and I feel like I have like all these unfinished businesses, all these inspirations starting these different things, but then I don't know. Can you relate with what he said here at all? If not, we can go on to another topic.
I can relate with what he's saying because I've done the same thing. I've
Mhm.
procrastinated by buying books and courses and procrastinating with overthinking. And I don't know whether he's speaking to just people's procrastination, or he's just trying to encourage people to just apply more of what they're learning. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's this other, I think he was a Hindu monk, and he was saying that like the more that we complete things that we started, the more we have this sense of momentum and willpower to
Mm,
complete more things. I find that I find that there's a lot of truth in that. And then the dilemma that I keep getting stuck in is like there's an initial thought that pops into my mind, and I have to be paying attention enough to be like, is this something that I should really start on and embark upon? Or is this something I should just ignore? Because I have so many other things that I'm trying to juggle. And I think a lot of this is the metaphor for like, you can only juggle so many balls, and some of us can juggle more balls than other people. But are you dropping balls already? If you are, then, you know, I guess like, do you, how many balls can you actually juggle? And are you going to put down another ball and start juggling another ball? If so, why? Why not just keep
yeah.
juggling the balls you already have? I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing where that I'm like trying to grasp and understand, but it's like I'm kind of like perpetually confused in this, and it's part of it is my own habits, I guess.
Yeah, because on the one hand, it's stop being distracted and just focus on the things you've already started. But then on the other hand, like you said, sometimes you got to just stop something, or you got to replace it with something else. And you got to be willing to, because you like can't just keep investing hours and hours into something that your time and energy might be better spent elsewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so yeah,
knowing when,
and you have to like distinguishing between like are you just like procrastinating on a bunch of stuff, or are there actual things that are very relevant for you to be doing that you're not doing that you should probably pick up on, or maybe recognizing when sometimes it is a good idea to just grind it out and just push through on a project to make sure it gets finished. Sometimes it's needed. But one thing that comes to mind is like I've had this like course that I bought years ago on like structuring a career. It's called like a purpose course, right? It's like this whole like 30 hours course. And then like I was I was about to I never completed it, and then I was gonna do it again like sometime this year. And like as I was about to do it, I then came across this YouTube video of like someone commenting on the exact course, and they were basically just like, there's nothing wrong with the course, but just don't waste 30 hours like contemplating with a journal when in reality, like your purpose can be found like right in front of you. Like, you know what I mean? Like we've spoken about this when like the universe is like giving you all these signals and like it's pointing you in the direction of where you need to go, but you just sometimes it's so obvious, but you can't see it. And he was talking about how like, for a lot of people, especially like people that are coaches and teachers, like your purpose is the people that are in front of you and that are around you in your environment. Like through the people you find your purpose. Yeah, it was a bit of an eye opener for me. I was like, yeah, maybe I don't. Maybe now, right? Maybe I can come back to that course, but right now, maybe that's not what I need. I don't need to sit down with a pen and paper for 30 hours. I just need to like,
yeah.
actually go and connect with people and like, the obstacle is the way, so to speak, to quote Ryan Holloway's book.
Rad, dude. It sounds like it comes back to where we started the conversation, to paying attention to
Yeah.
the environment, and then having the flexibility to shift and change and drop things and
Yeah.
start new
Not
things.
getting lost in all of the data, lost in all of the resources, and lost in all of the mind, and lost in other people's psychology. You know, like we're bombarded
That's a
with
good way of
all of
putting it.
that. So,
Thank you, Spencer.
yeah, often it's simpler than we think.
It's good
Thank
chatting with you,
you.
man. Thanks for your time. Thanks
Yeah,
for
you too, brother.
your answers and for the dialogue.
Thank you for your questions. Yeah, your question game is definitely improving. It was a nice conversation.
Rad. Take care, buddy. See
Yeah,
ya.
you too, man. All right.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
If you're curious to check out any content made by Spencer, you can look in the description box below this video to go to his TikTok or Instagram profile. Thank you for listening to the Blue Cuboid podcast. Please have a nice day.